Hi, welcome to Digging to China. I'm Dong Sheng. Today, I will discuss the topic of war and the economy. This topic needs to be divided into two parts. One is the issue of war, and the second is the relationship between war and the economy. War is a topic we are all familiar with these days. There are several ongoing conflicts in the world, such as the Russian-Ukraine war, the Israel-Hamas conflict, and the potential future conflict in the Taiwan Strait. War is not a distant issue for us. There's a popular notion that the world is moving towards a third world war, but I have some reservations about this view. The second key issue is the relationship between war and the economy. It's commonly believed that war hinders and damages economic growth. However, if we carefully study history, especially the development of modern capitalist civilization, we'll find that war and the economy can be interdependent. In some cases, war can significantly stimulate economic activity, a perspective often overlooked by the general public. When the existing economic system struggles to sustain itself, a wartime economy might offer a solution. Today, I'll break down the principles behind this concept and explain them in detail. First, let's tackle the issue of war. Are we heading towards a third world war or something even worse? In 2024, major English language media outlets have increasingly mentioned the possibility of a third world war. Some articles suggest that NATO is preparing for such a conflict, warning that if the Russia-Ukraine war continues, it could escalate into a widespread global war. Aside from this, several other regions in the world, such as Palestine and Israel, China and Taiwan, and even North and South Korea, are all highly unstable. Any of these areas could ignite regional conflicts, potentially escalating into a world war. I believe what may unfold next isn't necessarily a third world war, but rather a protracted 30-year conflict. I say this because it aligns with the nature of global conflicts. In the foreseeable future, warfare could become the new global norm, albeit with distinctions from both World War I and II. World War I and World War II were not separate conflicts, but rather two distinct expressions of the same underlying issue. They represented the collapse of the capitalist globalization system established in the 19th century. By the 19th century, a globalization system driven by trade had largely formed, and the people at that time were optimistic. They believed, albeit naively, that trade and the free exchange would ensure lasting peace and prosperity. However, this optimism was later revealed to be a fleeting illusion. However, this viewpoint is overly Eurocentric. While Europe experienced no prolonged large-scale wars between the Napoleonic era and the World War I, this period was anything but peaceful for regions beyond Europe. It was an epoch marked by imperialistic violence and conflict worldwide. Moreover, beneath the facade of apparent peace in Europe, the contradictions stemming from free market economics were steadily mounting. During that time, mainstream economics still clung to the idealistic notion of supply-demand equilibrium, promoting an equilibrium-based economic theory. However, economics in the 20th century gradually revealed that the human economic system is inherently unbalanced. Whether in economics or trade, these systems are intrinsically imbalanced. They cannot ensure universal profitability. Instead, a small minority reaps significant gains while others benefit minimally or even face bankruptcy, becoming part of the marginalized proletariat. The inherent imbalance within the economic system is widely recognized, yet people often shy away from confronting this reality. Instead, they persist in the fantasy of an idealized free market. This illusion resembles the hope for a perpetual motion machine, a system that maintains eternal equilibrium. However, in reality, all systems exhaust their resources and eventually transition from order to disorder. The global market system adheres to this principle as well. The disenfranchised and marginalized within the market, often referred to as the proletariat, are the exhaust emitted by this global trade machine. When this waste accumulates excessively, it sparks internal revolutions and wars. At such junctures, the global trade apparatus came to a standstill, and the facade of peace is shattered. When the disillusioned and the marginalized lose hope, they may band together to plot what they see as a proletarian revolution following the path of Soviet Russia. Alternatively, they might opt for another route, a blend of state socialism and nationalism akin to Nazi Germany. Moreover, if there is an unequal distribution of benefits, it could fuel the resurgence of nationalist sentiments in various regions, reminiscent of the chaotic conflicts witnessed during World War I. Thus, from World War I to World War II, the emergence of extreme nationalism, fascism, and communism can all be traced back to the failure of the balanced market system since the 19th century. In essence, proponents of liberalism have been grappling with the remnants of the 19th century. In other words, World War I and World War II are interconnected. They are not separate occurrences. Once we grasp the characteristics of both wars, it becomes clear that the current global military conflicts we face are not a third world war. Their system and structure differ significantly from those of World War I and II. Today, whether it's the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, or potential global conflicts in the future, they are not continuations of World War II, but rather resemble sequels to the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The essence of the 9/11 attacks lies in the confrontation between the Islamic civilization, distinctly different from the Christian civilization of the United States. In the initial phase of the 9/11 era, the Islamic civilization challenged Americans through tactics like insurgency and guerrilla warfare. Now, as the narrative advances into the second phase, the storyline intensifies as Islamic civilization aligns with Eastern philosophy, collectively engaging in unrestricted warfare against the Christian civilization. The current global wars are not only horizontal wars between different civilizations, but they also have a vertical attribute, which is the internal self-warfare within the same civilization. Civil wars within civilization. I believe even those who are slow to perceive or observant can now sense that within the Christian civilization led by the United States, there has been a surge of Western Marxists and Maoists. They are launching a full-scale attack on traditional liberalism and conservatism. The internal struggle within the United States and the West has commenced. So, who are these Marxists and Maoists active within the Western sphere? They encompass supporters of movements like Black Lives Matter, proponents of LGBTQ rights, fervent backers of Palestine, advocates for equality and welfare, proponents of expansive government, and even members of the Communist Party. This civilization conflict echoes a historical epoch reminiscent of Europe's 30-year war. The 30 Years' War, ostensibly a religious conflict between the Protestantism and Catholicism, was fundamentally a clash of civilization marking humanity's transition from the medieval to the modern era. We could be in the phase of civilization transition, where the clash and the shifts of civilization are occurring. This transition is unlikely to be as swift as the series of wars witnessed in World War I and II. The historical 30 Years' War doesn't denote a single conflict, but an era characterized by numerous wars. Its duration far exceeds the scale of both world wars. Given the likelihood of a future filled with warfare and unrest, countries globally must learn to adapt their economies to accommodate and possibly participate in war efforts. Consequently, the relationship between war and economy will evolve. This signifies a shift towards embracing the principles of war economics, necessitating a departure from the traditional notion of free trade system. Such a transition marks the end of an era and signals onset of a new epoch characterized by change. In a recent issue of The Economist, a renowned British economic journal, there was an especially noteworthy article discussing this very topic. Let's explore these insights. The article in The Economist is entitled New Economic Order. The cover illustration depicts the world torn into fragmented pieces, symbolizing the shattered glass heart of free traders. Since its establishment, this magazine has consistently advocated for free trade and liberalism. Yet, upon reading through the entire article, there is a rather peculiar sensation. It doesn't quite come across as a rallying cry to galvanize action, but rather resembles more of an elegy lamenting the end of an era. The article carries an air of reminiscence for the past, coupled with a sense of resignation. It appears that the fate of free trade has been sealed and a new era is bound to emerge. So what characterizes this new era? The economist lacks the capability to answer this question. In reality, the answer lies in the dawn of a war economy era. Take Russia, for instance, where war has served to revive its economy. Since the outbreak of the Russian-Ukraine conflict in 2022, there was a swift decline in exports and investments, leading to economic contraction. The situation looked bleak, with sanctions visibly impacting Russia in the short term. However, by 2023, economic recovery had commenced, with growth rates reaching as high as 5.7%, surpassing even the average growth rate of G7 countries. So what exactly did Russia do to salvage its economy? Let's examine media analysis. Bloomberg has an article stating that Russia's economy has shown remarkable resilience. The article briefly outlines the reasons behind this occurrence. Firstly, the sanctions imposed on Russia are not as severe as widely believed, as Russia can employ various methods to bypass them. For instance, it can sell energy to countries beyond the United States and Europe, which can then act as intermediates to supply energy to Russia's adversaries. Moreover, if necessary, China can step in as a willing buyer, becoming the ultimate purchaser of Russian products. Secondly, Russia's domestic market and employment sector remains relatively stable, enabling the smooth operation of internal economic activities. In May of this year, the British magazine The Spectator published an article titled "Why is Russia's economy booming despite sanctions?" The article highlights Russia's thriving domestic market, where labor shortages have led to continual wage hikes and historic lows in unemployment rates. In February of this year, the Financial Times featured an article titled "The Surprising Resilience of the Russian Economy," discussing the robustness of Russia's economic situation. The article mentions that the International Monetary Fund has raised its expectations for Russia's economic growth this year. It also notes that overall government spending in Russia has increased significantly, alongside noticeable increases in income, including various revenues such as energy income. In other words, sanctions have not effectively curbed Russia's energy income, while government spending has risen sharply, including substantial military expenditures. According to media reports, Russia allocated a military budget worth 36.6 trillion rubles this year, marking a 30% increase. Moreover, in a horizontal comparison, Russia's defense budget proportion is much higher than that of other countries. This level of spending holds significance not only militarily but also economically. Military expenditure can drive overall economic growth. With Russia excluded from the free trade system, its only recourse is to invest in military industry. Otherwise, the Russian economy would collapse. Thus, war becomes Russia's economic lifeline. As the spending increases, it entails a series of procurement, contracts, and commercial agreements. Behind this lies the involvement of numerous related enterprises in research, procurement, production, and consumption for the government, all contributing significantly to economic indicators. Russia's shift towards a war economy won't stand alone. More nations might find themselves compelled to adopt such a model to rescue their economies. War economics could emerge as a predominant economic paradigm globally. However, the extent of this shift varies across nations. Those excluded from the free trade system will swiftly and comprehensively transition into a war economy. Even countries embracing Christianity and free trade will feel the impact and might adopt a war footing. Notably, military powers like the United States will also undergo significant transformations towards a war economy. In March of this year, Forbes magazine published an article titled why the defense industry outlook is so strong. The article delves into why the US defense industry is thriving. It highlights that increasing global geopolitical conflicts offer a prime opportunity for the military industry to clear its inventory. We are in a period where the defense sector is actively reducing its stockpiles, which in turn significantly boosts economic growth. Furthermore, the high-tech components of the defense industry, which have dual uses in both military and civilian sectors, contribute positively to the overall economy. Given the current consolidation phase of the US stock market and the uncertain economic outlook, defense industry investments may become a new focal point for investors. This trend is increasingly apparent. For example, major US defense companies such as Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, and Northrop Grumman have seen significant stock price increases recently. Northrop Grumman's stock has been steadily rising this year after 2 years of volatility. Lockheed Martin's stock has climbed from around $350 to $460 since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. Similarly, General Dynamics stock has consistently increased from about $200 at the beginning of the conflict to nearly $300. These stock price gains reflect a rise in orders and profitability. Some analysts predict that the defense industry's investment returns over the next year will exceed those of the S&P 500 index. Naturally, this raises questions about China's future path. China is gearing up to fully transition into a war economy, although many choose to overlook this fact. The country is currently experiencing deflation, with its producer price index falling into negative territory and the consumer price index remains very low. For an economy trapped in deflation, conventional methods of economic recovery are challenging. The only viable option for revival now seems to be shifting to a war economy. Military spending is one of the few ways China can potentially boost its economic figures, making the defense industry the sector with the most growth potential in China. However, as of May 2024, China's defense industry has not shown any remarkable performance. In fact, over the past 5 years, the sector has been on a downward trend. However, according to data from approximately 140 defense companies, 2021 saw the highest revenue increase with a significant surge of 34.5%. This spike coincided with the centenary of the Chinese Communist Party, during which Xi Jinping made bold statements about the unification of Taiwan. Therefore, this increase was atypical and influenced by political factors. The rise in the defense sector that year served as a tribute to the CCP's centenary, almost as if it was mandated. From 2022 to January 2024, the profit growth rate of the defense industry began to decline, and by the first quarter of 2023, it had dropped to 6.7%. In recent years, the profitability of China's defense industry has been steadily declining, hitting new lows. This suggests that China has not yet fully transitioned into a war economy like Russia and the United States. However, as the US imposes higher tariffs and more sanctions, and as China's internal economic conditions continue to worsen, the country may find itself with no other options. In such a scenario, to prevent economic collapse, China might have to embrace a war economy as its only viable path forward. In fact, various signs indicate that China has been preparing to transition into a war economy for some time. The report from the 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party explicitly calls for the development of the military industry, the creation of a comprehensive strategic deterrence system, the expansion of new domain and high-tech combat forces, the acceleration of unmanned and intelligent combat capabilities, and the integration of cyber information systems. These advancements in new combat capabilities, artificial intelligence, and cyber warfare align with China's broader economic development goals. From China's perspective, the war economy, the military-industrial complex, and the planned economy are closely intertwined. Ultimately, all these elements serve to enhance military power, thereby protecting the regime and Xi Jinping's authoritarian rule. In the defense sector, the integration of military and civilian industries and the degree of public-private partnerships are significant. Many so-called private enterprises are fully controlled by the party and the state, functioning more like government agencies than independent businesses. This exemplifies the public-private partnership within the military-industrial complex. In China, various aspects of society increasingly resemble a large prison. Systems like the field chief system, supply and marketing cooperatives, and the grid management exemplify this prison-like control model. The prison and the military system share many similarities. Both are highly controlled environments where freedom is non-existent and absolute obedience is required. In such a society, a labor camp inmate can become a soldier by putting on a uniform, and a soldier can become a labor camp inmate by donning prison clothes. China is transforming into not just a massive prison, but also a large military camp with both systems coexisting. China hasn't fully embraced a wartime economy like the United States or Russia. This is largely because the conditions are not yet ripe. However, once the circumstances are ripe, China will undoubtedly take this path. Presently, the Chinese government is implementing various economic policies and stimuli to revive the economy, yet these efforts are bound to fail. It's only a matter of time after these attempts falter. China will inevitably revert to a wartime economy. This shift is an unavoidable trend. Thank you for watching. Please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.